Hello and welcome to Analysing Avatar The Last Airbender. I am Dan Doolan, and as always, I am joined by the late airbender himself, Chris Billingham. Woo!
Hey peeps.
An audience of one clapping away. I'd like to think, Chris, when I do this, that all the listeners are doing it too. Like, they're on a bus, they're going to work, you know, they're commuting. A lot of people listen to this while they commute, and suddenly they just start going, woo!
Nah.
And if you actually individually took the sounds from all the people clapping along when I do that and put them together, it would be like having an audience. An audience of my mum and your mum and Jess.
I like to think it's an audience of people going, if any man doesn't deserve that applause or whoops, it's Chris. And in fact, and for listeners that think, you know, well, he's talking about his mum now. Is he saying his mum feels that way about me? Definitely. I'll give you the quick quote that Dan already knows. When my mum saw me in the suit that I would wear for my wedding day for the first time, it all suited and booted. This is the suit that her little boy, you know, was going to become a man and marry the love of his life in. And my mum looked at me and went, people of your shape should wear tails. Beautiful.
She did say that.
Oh yeah, you were there, weren't you? You witnessed that moment.
I did. No, I did. But like exactly that. Like, you know, sometimes people say like, "Oh, you were there. You remember them saying roughly this." No, that's literally what she said, like word for word. It was with that. Like you've not embellished that in any way, shape, or form. And the best thing about that was she was facing you, so I got to laugh and not be seen laughing. I got to have a little hidden snigger to myself.
She is right though.
I don't know what you're talking about. It didn't help my frame. I'll tell you that.
It was fun. It was fun, that suit fitting, wasn't it? Because we got fitted the first time just before COVID. Because I was getting married in March. Yeah. And then we had to get another suit fitting 2 years later, and 18 months later, or whatever it was. And not many people got to know exactly how much weight they'd put on in COVID.
Because basically my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I can tell you exactly what happened to me is it was just my waist size that shifted. Like all my neck, like all that was fine. Like the shirt would still fit at the collar. The length obviously wouldn't have changed, but the one stat that changed between the measuring pre-COVID and the measuring out after COVID was how wide I was.
I remember saying to Tom, I remember going, "Oh, sweet mate, looking at the label, I think I've gone down a size," but it was just the maximum washing temperature. I hadn't gone down at all.
That's fantastic.
Anyway, Dan, the Southern Raiders.
Yes. Should we talk about the Southern Raiders? So, for those who don't remember this episode of Avatar The Last Airbender, I've just remembered what we're doing. We're supposed to be talking about a television show. Is the episode in which they acknowledge that it's weird that everyone is going on field trips with Zuko one by one, and this week it's Katara's turn. So Katara and Zuko go off to deal with both her issues with him and her issues with the Fire Nation in general. Aang feels very strongly that she shouldn't be seeking revenge. Nadia's just wandered in. She's obviously have something very important in here, foolishly. She's gone for a toy Pikachu. I don't know what she's doing.
That doesn't feel important.
What's she doing? What are you doing?
Wi-Fi password.
The Wi-Fi password. Oh, new computer. Oh, sorry. You got it?
Yeah, I really needed my Pikachu.
No, you needed the Pikachu. Okay, bye. Have fun. She's doing work stuff. She's changed off. They give her a new laptop, but she didn't have the password for the router, obviously. I forgot what I was even saying. Oh yeah, so Zuki Poos can tell Katara. Well, he's frustrated because she's not letting him into the gang. She's still being very guarded with him. So he decides, I know I can help her. I'll help her track down the man who murdered her mother and enact revenge on him. That'll teach her that I've changed my ways. And so he finds out from Sokka some details, figures it all out where they'd be, and that it'd be the Southern Raiders, and they go off on a little adventure to track down the guy. Aang raises concerns that she shouldn't be doing revenge. Don't do a revenge, is I think how he phrases it. and then she decides not to do a revenge because the guy doesn't even deserve that level of attention. Like, he's just a sad, sort of pathetic, evil human being. And then instead, she won't forgive him, but she chooses to forgive Zuko. Cue credits. So what do you think of Avatar The Last Airbender, don't do a revenge?
I'm very conflicted about it, Dan.
Yep.
As much as I fear, the reaction of you or people on the internet, because I remember you saying you sort of view every episode as a home run now until the finale.
Yep.
And there were elements of it I loved. I loved them finding the real person, and him just being sort of a weak-willed person, and being so like I think not. And I want to be clear here. We can talk about it more maybe after I've finished sort of summarising my thoughts, but not for killing Katara's mum, because I don't want to underplay that action, but for trying to sacrifice his own mother
to save his own skin.
I think he gets into Knobhead Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's already in there. He's. it's like, pretty because it's one of the most disgusting things a character has ever done in this show.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear because the bigger sort of villain things we tend not to underplay with Knobhead Hall of Fame. So that's why he's specifically in there for that moment. So I loved all of that stuff. I thought it was brilliant. But at the beginning, I'm sort of like, I'm finding it a little hard to buy that. She's doing that. She's been such a sort of, both her and Zuko really have been such a force for good recently. Katara, kind of in general, and Zuko more recently. I was like, I don't know if I quite believe that they're sort of going on this bloodthirsty revenge mission. And I'm sat there thinking, I don't know if they've done enough to convince me she would do this. So you can imagine how I felt when she then bloodbends, which was like an amazing kind of moment.
Right.
But I was like, I'm not sure they've done enough to convince me that this would happen. So lots of stuff that I loved, but not quite sure I believed the whole conceit of the episode.
Which is a fairly big.
Yeah,
it's not like that's. I mean, that's definitely not a trip to nitpick corner. I wasn't necessarily convinced by the entire episode's conceit.
I tell you what, though, forgive it all for the soccer Suki stuff.
We'll get to that.
That was stunning.
Yeah. Very, very funny. So let's break it down a bit then. So let's start with the major plot, and we'll get to some of the side stuff. I think I agree with you. I think while I do love this episode and what this episode represents, I do think the execution could definitely be less wonky. I think is how I would go for it. I think it works for me, but it's so on the line, and it really could. Anyone telling me what you're telling me, basically, that didn't quite come across for you, or it didn't quite feel believable to you, makes perfect sense to me, because what they essentially do is make Katara a completely different person, to have her go on an arc where she becomes the person that she's been for ages. And the way they get away with it for me is this idea of Zuko is bringing up all these old feelings she has about the Fire Nation, because this person from the Fire Nation, who isn't just a person from the Fire Nation, but is a person from the Fire Nation who literally has betrayed them specifically in the past. Sorry, her specifically in the past, when she chose to give him a chance. He's kind of become he kind of represents this thing that she hates because it took her mother away, which is this nation of people that when they came to her town when they were younger, they killed her mother. And then we've got this other person from that same force that's now part of the group that she was willing to trust, and she literally got burnt before. So the idea that all those feelings become mixed up with each other might theoretically be enough to push someone into a dark place they've not previously been in. The only problem is the episode doesn't really do enough to sort of show that. It's a bit fansplainy.
Yeah, because like if they had, because obviously she's just been reunited with her dad as well. So the sort of memories of her mum will be quite fresh in her mind because she'll be, thinking about her dad, thinking about her family, remembering her mum. But, not even in this episode do they pull on that thread.
No. And it's so, it's so close to being genius because there are so many elements coming together here. Because it's not just closure for Katara on a plot thread that's been a plot thread for her since episode 1, basically. But it's also a chance to merge that with her feelings for Zuko and sort of, get her to a place where she's more comfortable with him being part of the gang. And that's a really important moment. And then, tying that to the ending, which we'll come to, which I also think is genius, Aang being like, violence isn't the answer. That's also genius. There are so many things coming together here in ways that are clever. It's a shame it isn't as satisfying as it could have been, just on the grounds of I think we should have spent a little bit more time over the last handful of episodes, maybe since the defeat at the eclipse, the invasion, getting Katara more and more pent up on this situation. And I know it's a kids' show from this era when these stories were generally more self-contained. They didn't do as many overarching, story arcs, or in this case, what I'm suggesting would be an overarching character arc. So I do get why that's not how it played out. We start the story and end the story in our 22-minute confines, especially when it comes to a big character thing like this. But I do think it would have worked a lot better if we'd laid more groundwork, so it didn't feel like they just suddenly... The closest we got was her reaction to Zuko in one of the earlier episodes when he first joined them. But it doesn't really take us here, to this.
But
because in this episode, very quickly, I just add this last thing. She goes as far as to say something genuinely horrible to Sokka. I get that you didn't love her the way I did, which is an awful thing to say. And Sokka demonstrates being just the best person ever by not holding that over her ever again. He should be fuming that she said that. It's an awful thing to say to another person.
But that just feels like they just didn't have the time to loop back round to it, doesn't it? That doesn't feel like Sokka. But then again, Sokka's getting some tent action. Maybe, Sokka's say anything you want to me, sis. I don't care. I completely echo what you've just said with the Zuko side of things as well, because I think there's a world where you could go, Zuko is so determined to be a good person now that he just can't help but feel incredibly frustrated that Katara doesn't see that, and he's desperate for her approval, that he'll do literally anything for it. So they go and do that. You can fansplain it that way and you can interpret it that way, but we've not had that layered into the last few episodes with Zuko. What have we had layered in with the last few episodes of Zuko? His ongoing plot since he turned good has been thinking about his uncle, thinking about what his uncle would say, thinking about what his uncle would do. And his uncle would say, there's no point going after this for revenge. His uncle's whole thing has been, Zuko, you're going after Aang for revenge, and that's the wrong thing to do. So it's suddenly his character has to forget the voice that's been in his head for the last 3 or whatever episodes as well. So I think both on the Katara side and the Zuko side, they don't quite do enough to justify this behaviour.
Yeah, 100% agree. Before we get the comments, I think, just clarify, I really agree with your point that if he'd been thinking about his uncle, as they've set up in the previous episodes, Uncle Iroh would absolutely say revenge isn't the way. But I will say, Zuko was never after Aang for revenge. He was after Aang for restoring his honour.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, because you said this whole thing was that he was after Aang for revenge. Before we got the comments, I just wanted to clarify. Chris's point, 100% still valid, but just reframe that slightly.
Sorry. I think what I meant by revenge is kind of revenge on his father, by restoring his honor by capturing the Avatar. But
right. I just wanted to clarify so we didn't get the comments. Feel free to comment on anything.
I encourage them. Give me your comments. No, I'm joking. Don't do that. I won't read them.
No, you genuinely won't. Actually, I'll do it later. We got a cracker this week, though. We got a good one. Have you seen that?
To be fair, I do sometimes read them. It's just it feels quite dangerous to read them on these episodes. It's my logic there.
Yeah, no, we got a really good one this week, and I can't. Let me see if I can quickly find it. Ah, damn it! It's lost in my notifications. The problem is YouTube has started muddling in my comment notifications with like this YouTube channel you're subscribed to has posted a new video. It's a real pain in the backside. Make it how it used to be YouTube, where they were separate for me, because I don't know if I've changed something or if you've changed something. I don't know if it's you or if it's me, but something's changed, and
I would suspect it's YouTube.
It's probably YouTube, I would guess. Here we go. This is it. I found the comment. It's from Moctezuma. It says, "My gosh, why do these doofs always talk about Airbender on their Doctor Who and Harry Potter podcast? Stay on topic."
That's an amazing comment.
It's great. It's a good one. I had a good chuckle at that, so I thought I'd give that a little shout out while I remembered. So I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, so it doesn't quite work for either character's arcs, because if Zuko really is trying to be more Zen, be more Iroh, then he would
Can we just give a shout out? Sorry, we need to give a shout out for the reply to that comment as well, which is DG464, who says, "Right, they talked so much Avatar, there was no time for Power Rangers."
I didn't see that one. That's good also. That's great.
It's a brilliant response.
Good work, guys. Good work. I like a good comment. Keep them up. What was I saying? It's good. To be fair, we've not talked about Power Rangers nearly as much in Analysing Avatar as we did in Steven University. And I still don't understand really how we got to Power Rangers so often in Steven University. I mean, I understand Peridot, Green Ranger. No, was it? Lapis was the Green Ranger. That was it.
Yeah, I referred to Lapis as the Green Ranger, and you were always like, Peridot is way more the Green Power Ranger than Lapis is.
I vaguely remember that.
Which is
anyway. So you're right. Yeah. So we got Katara, who's suddenly like at the point of saying such horrible things to her brother out of nowhere, because I guess some of this stuff's come back to her, but it's kind of fuzzy why suddenly this is like the issue. And then you've got Zuko, and his whole arc recently has been about thinking, what would Iroh do, basically? That he's done that in most of the episodes we've seen him in since he turned good. And what Iroh would do in this case is what Aang does, which is say, revenge isn't going to solve this. You do need closure, correct, but maybe we go talk to this guy. Maybe we go, you confront him, but we just chill on the death threats and the blood bending,
And maybe there's an excellent moment there for Zuko and Katara where they get there, and Katara says something like, "Oh, sorry, I let you down," and Zuko's like, "No, I didn't doubt for 1 minute that you weren't going to hurt him. I didn't bring you here to hurt him. I brought you here so you could speak to him, or right. I brought you here for closure. I never expected it to be violence." And then the fact that he never expected her to be violent warms her to him, and like, you know what I mean? Like, it just makes it all a bit cleaner, I think, if that's the way.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right, and I think as well you can fansplain away almost all of this with stuff like that, or completely. Even just saying like, for Katara, like. We already talked about her side of it earlier because we sort of said the excuse was like, between her dad coming back, and because just to be fair, the episode doesn't start with her being mad about the situation with her mother. It starts with her being mad at Zuko, and then it all gets muddled in with old feelings about her mother when they have a conversation, when he confronts her about why she's not giving him a break, and then. From Zuko's perspective, the defense is quite simply, well, he's that desperate to get on side, he's willing to give her... He wants to do something to get her on side. Like, he really wants to fit in, he really wants to be part of this group, and she's the last hurdle, Everyone else seems to have accepted him now. Which, by the way, is demonstrated in my favourite way ever, when one of my favourite lines from the whole show when they're sat around camping, and Aang's like, camping, huh? Just like old times. And Zuko says, if you really want it to feel like old times, I could chase you around a little and maybe try to capture you.
That was brilliant.
My favourite part about that, very quickly, is just Dante Basco's delivery. Is he hesitates, like he doesn't think he can say that joke, like it might be a bit inappropriate. So there's a small pause before he says, and try to capture you. Which is just perfect, because it's it's very subtle. It's just a slight hesitation in the middle of the sentence that really does sell that he's like, I've got this great joke, but I don't know if it's appropriate to say it. Which is just perfect.
Very good.
It's very good. It's very, very good. Anyway, so, you could argue that the defense for Zuko's situation is he's just literally willing to do whatever, or maybe he did know ultimately Katara was too good-natured to go through with it. You could argue that, and I think that's fine, but it's not in the text. No. You can pull it out of the subtext if you want, but it's not in the text. And Katara's, I think, it's literally just like it's the hand of the writer again, isn't it? It's we know these are feelings she's had in the past, so it's not like out of nowhere. But why wasn't she upset about this last time she talked to Zuko, or when this happened, or when the bloodbending thing came up, or it's not like every single time she's been agitated, it's come back to her mother, So this time it does feel particularly like the plot needs her to be mad about her mother so Zuko can get this idea. So we're going to give her that closure. It feels very like the writer's moving the chess pieces around deliberately rather than a very natural way to get to this. Once we get to it, it's brilliant stuff. The moment when she chooses to bloodbend is haunting, and a really good payoff for that last moment from the bloodbending episode. And she says, you bloodbended, you're part of this now, like, or whatever Yama says at the end of that episode. Because
completely,
you had some
completely
specific concerns about bloodbending not coming back. So I'm curious how you felt about the execution. Sorry, excuse me, execution.
First of all, I completely agree with your points there, but didn't you slightly want the moment where, because you see it a little bit in his face, but didn't you want the moment where Zuko goes, "What the fuck was that?"
Right?
Because you see it a little bit.
I did want that, but I also knew that would interrupt the flow and atmosphere of the moment. So I did want that, but I also kind of understand why I didn't get that, or they didn't want to do that, because I also think that might have kind of hampered how haunting that moment is. But you're right. It would have been certainly afterwards. Zuko being like, "Hey, just to clarify, what the fuck did you just do to that poor guy?"
It was haunting. It was upsetting to see the character get to that point. But again, I just feel like if any episode should have been 45 minutes, it's this one, because
I would agree with that.
So,
it could have used a two-parter for sure.
She was so devastated by the idea of bloodbending, and she did it again, and we don't see the fallout of that. We don't see her wrestle with that. We don't see how she reacts to that, which means we kind of don't have the payoff for the last episode, because it would be more in keeping with the last episode to see that torment her. I hope it comes back again, because the scene I want with the bloodbending is her being forced to choose between, I don't want to see, in a way, I think it's really more original and surprising, so I really like it for that. I just wish we got some execution about that after, either with her or Zuko. But also sort of if you'd have asked me how I would want to see bloodbending come back, as revenge would be really down on my list compared to stop them going after, to stop them killing her brother or one of the gang, or even, to stop them harming Zuko, and then she bloodbends to stop a firebender doing that. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see her pushed to it in the heat of battle, but still wrestle with it, as opposed to, I'm John Wicking it this week, and I'm just going to do it. And they made it surprising. I literally gasped. I was like, but yeah, I think it's so. I'm glad it was there, but I would have liked a bit more exploration, both sides of it.
And I think that would have been easy to do, because my answer to the question, or my fansplainy way of filling in the gap that the episode doesn't supply in the text itself here, is she does get that moment of realizing what she's done, but it's when she chooses not to kill him. You know, I think she sees how far she's gone. You know, so there's two quick solutions to this problem. One is have her flashback to everything she's done in the last day. Just in that moment when she's about to kill Yan Ra, when she's about to throw all those icicles at him. One solution is to have her literally remember herself, getting onto that ship, knocking all those guys overboard, bloodbending that guy, looking all fierce and like she wants to murder everyone, and then not doing it, not killing him, and then that being kind of like, you know what, she's now seeing what she's become. Right? She did it so callously in the moment, so without remorse, and now looking back, she realizes the mistake she's made. That's one way to do it. Way number two is not to do, as cool as the visual is of all the that turning the rain into those icicles and nearly murdering Yanra that way. Having her use bloodbending on Yanra too.
Yes, yeah.
And then stopping, realizing what she's become, using that to have him walk off a cliff or something, which if anyone says that's really grim, she was about to impale him on 1,000 ice spikes. I don't know where the line is if you're saying, using bloodbending for that is any worse. I mean, they nearly had somebody in a previous episode use bloodbending to have Aang and Sokka stab each other, so it is dark. But is it any darker than anything we've done before with bloodbending, or even the threat at the end of this actual episode? So I understand that complaint. I understand that's a really horrific idea. But that is what bloodbending is. Bloodbending is a horrific idea. It's deeply upsetting. It's very disturbing. So either have her flash, realize what she's done, and have her stop, or have bloodbending be the thing she's going to use to kill him, and then stop. Ties it all up in a much neater bow and makes it make a lot more sense. Again, for me, this still mostly just works, but it's very on the line because of the stuff the episode kind of implies without saying. So you're filling in a lot yourself rather than the episode actually doing it.
So did you have the same feelings about the bloodbending stuff then?
Similar ones. It's funny, isn't it, how sometimes when you're criticizing something, or you're looking at something with an eye to be critiquing it afterwards, how you sometimes get the wrong end of what the problem is. Because there was the note I wrote that I deleted later on when I thought about it more, where I said, she used it on the wrong guy. Why have her use it on this first guy and not save it for Yanra, right? Bloodbending, that's a big moment. But that's not what the problem is. The problem is the way they chose to use bloodbending didn't give us that catharsis that you were talking about. And that's actually the issue, because we don't get to see her acknowledging what a monstrous thing that is. And I don't even mind that they chose to do it as revenge. If we're going to force bloodbending back into it, I think that's as valid a reason as in defense of her friends. But we've already kind of done in defense of her friends. That's how she used it the first time. So for me,
true,
I don't even mind that we used revenge as the reason. My issue comes with the fact that we didn't get a beat for Katara to acknowledge how horrendous that is. That she went that far. The episode never takes a second to let Katara feel badly for what she's done. And that's really where it's missing a bit of catharsis for me. Or closure. Closure. Yeah, we all need closure. Closure doesn't mean killing someone, though, Katara. Just want to make that clear.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. But I guess she has to use bloodbending with the first guy because he's so strong, whereas the second guy doesn't really need that. But again, that's me adding text to the text. That's not, the episode doesn't do that.
But does that not even if that's subtext, not text, that would make her choice to bloodbend even on a guy that was already helpless even more mortifying to me. It's one thing to use it on someone who's maybe about to overpower you because he's very good at fighting or whatever, or is at the peak of his physical fitness or whatever, using it on someone as pathetic as Yan Ra turns out to be at the end of this episode, who apparently his mother is somehow related to Howard's mother from Big Bang Theory. I don't know. It was an interesting choice. Isn't it funny that they felt the need to like characterize his mother as like a shitty person? Like, why? Like, it's no matter what happens, him throwing her under the bus at the end is gonna be shitty. You don't need to make her a bad person. Also, I guess the idea.
I think that's more. That's not about her. That's about making his situation seem really bleak and dire.
Right. You're right. You're exactly right. That's
and you know, he led an army, and now he's not even the boss of his house. His older mother is.
She's all like, Howard, get me the brisket.
Yeah. And she gets away with it because he's that weak. I think it's a shorthand to say a lot about his character.
Yes.
I've got a question for you, Dan.
Please.
In a world, do you think...
In a world where Chris asks questions...
The not wanting a children's TV show to be so dramatic creates a problem with this episode in a world where if we don't see someone die on screen, they're not really dead? Because I think most people, and I had my moments of doing it, maybe not most people, but I think people could easily be forgiven for watching this and expecting some kind of she's not really dead twist because of how much it's, and then she went away. Like, there were points where I'm like, captured, dead? Like, I can't remember which is it? Like, and I just think, do you think that damages the episode? And obviously I know why they can't show a woman being killed on screen. You know, it's the Justice for Jet stuff all over again. But who they've name checked in this episode. But I feel like that did. I think someone could easily watch this and be like, oh, is he gonna say I let her live, and like all that kind of stuff, and then we get that over the next few episodes. Or maybe it had been so clearly stated in the past that she had been killed. I don't know, but like it just felt a bit. It felt like maybe we would not. That scene was being censored.
I suspect that they did deliberately edit round the actual death or discovery of the body. And I definitely think I would forgive a modern audience member for reading that as a cue that there might be a twist. It's unavoidable, unfortunately. I mean, they wouldn't. The show wouldn't let them kill Jet on screen. So, you know, it's there's not much they can do about the chance somebody interpreting them editing around it that way. But I totally see it. 100% agree that is a real danger when you do that. You know, it's the old rule of thumb. It caught me out when we were reviewing Infinity Train episodes. There was a character death that kind of was cut away from, and it led to me very boldly proclaiming that character was absolutely 100% not in fact dead. And I planted a flag in that like I've never planted a flag before across multiple episodes of my Infinity Train ramble reviews, or whatever I called those things, and that character never returned.
I really want to re-listen to your Infinity Train reviews because it feels like it feels like Steven Universe is a podcast of a man just pretty much nailing Steven Universe predictions. Infinity Train is a podcast of a man not getting any, making bold predictions week to week. A lot of it turning out to be wrong. No, and then this podcast,
I think I had a pretty good hit rate on Infinity Train. Okay. I got a lot of good feedback on I did get a lot of stuff right. But you know, this is the funny thing, isn't it, Chris? You know, you go through Steven University making predictions, and many of them incorrect, many of them correct. But the show was long in, and people only go, "Oh my god, he got it right!" when you get it right. The rest of the time, it's just like, it's funny. He's not quite figured it out yet. But you know, because I think you got not more stuff wrong, but as much stuff wrong was right with Steven Universe.
Yeah,
but
that's
when
fair.
you got
that's
it
fair.
right, it was like an absolute home run. But it's funny when you do it week to week, like I did. Terrible idea, because everyone is like pitching in on whether you were right or wrong as it happens. And like, because they're all trying to figure out what's going to happen next with you, which means that when you say something, it goes in right or wrong. And so I definitely got pulled up for that one. And the worst part was I doubled down on that one so much. I was convinced. I was so convinced. That particular one was my biggest misstep in Infinity Train for sure. But I felt really proud. Particularly, I think it was the end of season 2 or the end of season 3. I predicted huge chunks of the next season. Like very. Yeah, I can't remember which one it was, but. Yeah.
I think that's why people get a kick out of you getting it wrong so much, because as I've said before, you're one for predicting when you watch something. You love a good prediction, and you're very often right. And there's just something satisfying when you're wrong.
It's because when I predict stuff, I'm not like, this might happen. I'm like, this is the thing, and that's what that thing. You know what? And I learned that lesson on Steven Universe towards the end of Steven Universe. And Steven Universe Future, when we caught up, and I was able to start predicting openly on the podcast, we had a few where I went really whole hog, got it wrong, and was like, from now on, that's where that whole planting a flag phrase came from. I was like, I'm not planting flags anymore. Maybe. I've only since then broken that rule once or twice, and that Infinity Train one was one of those examples. I was so convinced. If podcasting had been as prominent and YouTube feedback had been as prominent when Avatar originally aired, I guarantee you, Chris, some commenter, some sort of YouTube feedback guy would have been like, "I'm telling you, Kaya's alive. They didn't show it. That's why I'm planting a flag," and he would have been very wrong.
We recently watched a mystery show to review for the podcast for Nothing But Static, and Dan made a prediction on air which he got right, and my cousin also watches that show and loves it, and he texted me and he was like, "Oh, just listen to your review of that." And I said, "Yeah," I said I was gutted when Dan got it right, and my cousin put, "I audibly sighed." Shows how many predictions you make and how fun it is when you get them wrong.
Yeah. It's all in the delivery, Chris. It's all in the delivery. I make people. I guess I've got a punchable voice. That's what it is.
Well, I don't know why he sighed, because for me it was just because obviously people don't see, because people I may say this and people are like, "You're being a bit harsh. He doesn't make that many predictions," but we make a lot of predictions like in sort of WhatsApp messages and sort of day-to-day conversation about TV. So maybe that's where it came from. Well, I'm worried. I should stop because I don't want to give Dan a complex. And Dan basically sat there and he can't predict things with Nadia because she mows and it spoils things, and he can't predict things with me because I'm saying that he predicts a lot, and just all these he goes into the woods and just yells predictions about Severance and other dramas.
What do you mean that's where I'm going to be? That's what I'm doing right now, mate. As soon as Nadia goes to work, I just pace the house predicting at my cat.
Anyway,
I like to try and sort of puzzle out where the story is going, because theoretically, a correctly functioning story, the breadcrumbs should be there for you to put it together. Theoretically.
Yeah.
So I enjoy that reverse engineering where the story is going. And you know what? When I'm not like voicing those theories on a podcast or, on YouTube or like, in a tweet or whatever, then, there's no pressure anyway. So it's just for fun. It's like I break it down. Like I just enjoy sort of like, reverse engineering the writing.
Yeah. That's fair. What are your other thoughts on this episode?
That is a good question, Chris. Right, let's talk about.
You seemed so surprised I was trying to get us back on track. That is, whoo, look, Avatar, yeah.
I appreciate it. This week we've screwed up and had a tangent sort of mid-episode instead of in the 20 minutes at the back end. But anyway, I'd forgot this episode ends with a massive battle sequence at the Southern Air Temple. We should talk about that, and the splitting up of the gang. Very strange, felt very arbitrary, but Zuko versus Azula was a really awesome fight. Well, I don't know, any thoughts on that whole section?
At the beginning of the episode, I think you just said the end, but yeah,
weird, wasn't it? If I said the end, apologies. Yeah, sorry, I meant the beginning.
Yeah, it is a bit arbitrary, isn't it? Because it feels like it's splitting up the gang just so their dad can't give an opinion on revenge for their mum. Like, it feels like, well, we can't have our dad tell her not to do it, so let's split them up. And again, you know, it would have been very easy to have Azula be like, you're trying to be a good person, you're always a bad person. And then maybe Zuko's like, yeah, let's get revenge because I'm a bad person. And then actually he's not because he knew she was never going to do it. Like, it feels like you could do more with it. But, like you said, it was a kick-ass fight. Like, the animation on it, the spectacle of it, it's awesome. So you absolutely forgive it. Like,
yeah, because I mean, it's good because it gets them moving again. You know, they've been stationed at that temple for quite some time now, and it was good to see them moved on. Weird to see the group immediately split up, and that it was just so like random. Like, you guys go that way. I guess we're all getting on Appa. Who's with you? The main gang plus who got on that wasn't Suki. The main gang plus Suki. All the B characters go this way. All the A characters plus Suki go this way.
Yeah. Literally, it's like anyone who's had more than 20 lines in the show this way. it's like they pulled up IMDb and were like, right, you've appeared in two up now. Fucking go that way, mate.
And it just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. There was clearly room enough on Appa for like Hakoda to stay with them. Or at least one other one. Like, it seemed so strange. But anyway, immediate battle, whatever. Yeah, Zuko Azula was just fantastic as a fight. I liked seeing them exchange dialogue, and I liked seeing them fight. And I really liked that. Basically, this is the first time we've seen Zuko fight someone since learning his new firebending techniques.
It was wicked.
And it seems that his non-rage way of firebending is kind of brought him up in line with Azula's insane over-the-top rage fire that's all, blue and shit. Because they pretty much, seem evenly matched now. And I like...
Yeah, there was that...
I like that.
Sorry, go on.
No, go on.
There was that great moment where they had them both blast out, orange and blue, and, the blast meet in the middle, which was just wicked.
Yeah, it's a great visual. It just puts them on even footing, which I wasn't expecting. And then there's that great moment where she's falling and he's falling, and they save him on Appa, and then he looks back and he's like, God, she's not going to make it. And then she just Iron Man's herself to the wall and slides down, giving him an evil glare like usual. He's just like, of course, I'm not that fucking lucky. It's a great moment. It's a great. You do forgive the weird arbitrary dividing up of the gang for that reason.
Yeah, and it is. I think also all the camping moments, the fact that their dad would have an issue with it, and it gets rid of that. It's as you said, you can feel the hands of the writers all over this episode, but it leads to some good stuff.
Yeah, I would agree. I like that when we see Katara when she walks off from Zuko the first time. The moon is framed in the background, not quite full. Which I think is just a nice detail, because obviously the next night it is full, because that's how it works. And I just thought that was really cool that the animators had the attention to detail, because I wouldn't have noticed if it was full, or if it was half that night and full the next. I'd have just, animation, or even full both nights. Who cares? But the idea they went to the attention, oh yeah, this is the night before it's going to be full for her to use bloodbending. We'll show it being almost full, and that way that's why it'll be full the next night. Again, a detail I wouldn't have noticed whether they got it right or wrong, and they went to the trouble of getting it right. That's neat. We've teased it a few times. Let's talk about Sokka waiting for Suki. Few points on that. First of all, I like that when Zuko initially goes in, his sort of mouth falls, because they kind of imply he knows what's going on and he's a bit embarrassed, but then he just sort of sits down as if oblivious and goes, I need to talk to you about your sister. And it's like, wait, do you know or do you not know? I can't tell.
I like it as well because it sets the audience know from her going in as well and then choosing not to. The audience know what's coming, but they don't know how far they're going to go with it.
Yes.
And then when you see Zuko's face fall, you're like, oh, we're going somewhere with this. Beautiful.
It is genuinely fantastic. yeah, it's just so, because it's just like one of those perfect moments that just like encapsulates where their relationship is up to, gives us that update, helps push the story forward because it's the conversation with Zuko, with Sokka and Zuko, that pushes the story to where it goes next. But it also serves as this great comedy moment and an update for where the relationship is. It just does all these things and does them all really well. Like it's very, very clean and well executed.
And how fresh and fun does it feel that we don't have to have, so we kissed the other day, what does this mean for us moment? Like, do you know what I mean? It's just like they're a horny couple now, and that's great.
I mean, that's not how I would describe them, but yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where you're right. It's like on the other payoff as well on the other end when Zuko leaves and Sokka's doing something like Suki, and Zuko's still there. He's like, "What are you doing?" Nothing. You know, so good.
It's good stuff.
Love it. That's good stuff. We get the flashbacks to the raid itself. What do we feel about, and take a shot, everyone, the notion that Kaya sort of Harry Pottered the situation and sacrificed herself to protect Katara? She gave herself up essentially as the rumoured last waterbender left to protect her own daughter.
I thought it was a bit weird that the fire guy wasn't like, prove it.
I wrote that in my notes. I'll read you the note. It was word for word. I wrote, ridiculous, he didn't ask her to prove it, but cool.
Yeah.
That's what I wrote. Yeah, I agree with that.
But I think, again, that reflects on I'm adding to this, but that reflects on the character. He doesn't actually care whether he gets the waterbender. He wants to be able to say, yep, killed them, all good. How great am I? You know?
He wants the glory for having achieved the mission. He doesn't really care what that actually means.
Yeah, exactly. So, I thought that was a bit odd, but I thought that was very sweet, very touching, very in character with that family.
How do we feel about the flashbacks in general? Do you like that? Because I kind of like that they built up. Because actually, I will say, in the end, I mean, when they do that final flashback where he's like, we're after the waterbender, and she sort of outs herself, it is ambiguous enough that you could think maybe she was captured the same way Hammer was. But I do think that seals it a bit more. I think they're very atmospheric, seeing the Fire Nation come in to a slightly more built up, Southern Water Tribe, because when we saw them when Aang visited, all the men were off to war, but we actually get to see all the men there, fighting the Fire Nation forces as they come in. So I liked the whole action sequence that came along with that too.
Yeah, I agree completely.
I made a terrible mistake, Chris. I put a sweet in my mouth.
Oh, sorry, I'll talk more. I think that was really great, and it was great to see. It was great to see young Katara, and it really kind of, that wasn't that long ago in reality, but she's such a different character now. It really reminds you that these characters weren't allowed to have a childhood, really.
Mm. Okay,
Much like
sweet. That was a terrible. I won't do that again. I thought I could eat it in time. I couldn't.
Much like the characters from Harry Potter.
Yes.
It really reminded me of this one episode of Power Rangers where I haven't got any link to Power Rangers.
So you know how the 13th Doctor is a woman.
Yeah,
Katara's a woman.
Yes, you're right, Dan.
That's something I noticed when I was watching it.
Yeah. I think there is an episode of Power Rangers called Green No More where Jason's grappling with guilt over Tommy and maybe goes off for revenge or just feels a bit down or something.
I think you're right, There is one where he goes mad and beats someone up too much or something. I remember that. I vaguely remember that. Anyway, just wanted to give the dialogue in this episode a little nudge for just being good. This is about closure and justice, is what Zuko says, but Aang's response is, I think it's about revenge. That's really good. Then Aang chooses to let it go. Let your anger out.
Aang's so well So sorry, I talked over you. Carry on.
No, go.
Aang's so well characterized in this episode.
Yes, he is. I would agree.
So classic Aang. It's great stuff.
Yeah, but also like Aang finally coming to grips with his wise old monk side in a way that he hasn't previously, because they've always played it as he's an idiot kid, and but he's slowly but surely becoming sort of wise and thoughtful in the way that the monks would have wanted him to become. Saying let your anger out and then let it go and forgive him, and he's exactly right. That's what she needs to do, and that's what she does. And then even they have the moment where Sokka compliments him on it and says, "You're pretty wise for a kid. Usually it's annoying, but this time I'm just impressed," which is just a great line. And then he asks if he can borrow Momo for a week, which is just... Yeah. And Hank's like, why? He's like, I don't know.
Yeah. See, I was hoping that would be, again, linked to some sort of romantic gesture.
No, I would have liked the idea if in the end of the episode in the background you could just see Sokka with Momo on his shoulder. That would have been enough for me. But they didn't even do that, which is a shame. For those who don't remember, the reason he asks to borrow Momo is because Aang has just lent Katara Appa to go on her revenge mission. This is the first time we hear their mother's name. It's Kaya. It's just the first time we see that. I made a note of that. I do think vengeful Katara is a complete badass when she's got the water arms and she's like blasting her way through that. It's great. Let's see. We covered that. Yeah, I think we covered a lot of this actually.
Nice.
Anything else? I didn't. Oh yeah, and obviously it ends with I didn't forgive him, but I am ready to forgive you. Let's talk about the actual ending. Sorry, yeah, this is the big thing. The ending, which is violence isn't the answer. Violence isn't the answer. It never is. Then I have a question for you. What are you going to do when you face my father? Big tease.
That was that. Yeah, big tease. I thought, you just feel the hands of the writers on this episode, can't you? It just feels like we need to tease. But I loved it. Like, what an interesting tease and question. And kind of does make you go, yeah, if they're determined to not do anything like this, because they've not built in the time for, with Steven Universe, they'd really built in, like you were saying earlier, kind of the puzzle pieces and the breadcrumbs for he's going to convince them to change their mind. They cannot do that with this. Like, I'll just be like, come on now. Like, they've made him such a force for evil, so how does that end? I guess logically, maybe the only route is to Harry Potter it, like take a shot. But what I thought was so clever about the ending of Harry Potter is you kind of sat there going, well, one has to kill the other, but that means Harry's got to become a killer, like, which feels a bit bold. And spoilers for the end of Harry Potter, but he doesn't. Voldemort, dies by his own sword, like literally. So I guess
he dies by his own sword in the book. In the film, he turns to dust when Neville slices a snake in half, and it's all very confusing.
Yeah, that's very true.
So for those of you who've only ever seen the film and don't know what we're referring to, in the book, Harry's Expelliarmus spell does knock the wand out of Voldemort's hand as it is spouting the Avada Kedavra spell. So when it leaps out of his hand and turns around in the air, Voldemort's own killing curse points back at him and kills him, and that's why he dies. It's very clever, actually. It's what it is. Very it's a very satisfying moment. I remember when I first read that, just being like, that is fucking genius.
Yeah, because the whole Harry's
such an
whole
elegant
thing,
solution.
Yeah, and Harry's whole thing has been about defending, not attacking, and it's not. And it's Expelliarmus.
Been embedded into like 4 books straight.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I assume maybe something similar to that, because I don't think you can... Or maybe, you play up... No, it is literally the Avatar's role to do this, so maybe he has to do it, and it changes him. I don't know, but yeah, it's certainly... But that's exactly the point of it. That's why it's such a clever moment at the end of this episode, because it's got me thinking, oh yeah, I wonder what's going to happen there.
In before Aang whips out his ukulele. I don't need you to respect me, I respect me. The Fire Lord.
I love that moment so much.
Great. And the Fire Lord's just like, what? Aang's like, I don't need you to love me, I love me. Father's like started blasting him with fire, and Aang's just like bouncing around. But I need you to know you love me if you change him. And Fire Lord's just throwing fireballs at him, and he's just dancing around it while he plays his ukulele.
Zuko slides in and starts performing Stronger Than You.
Yeah. Man, where were we when they were writing these finales? Because we really could have nailed this.
Maybe this is why Rebecca Sugar's never agreed to be interviewed on our podcast.
Well, you know, a small inside story. We very nearly. It's so frustrating. We reached out. We got in touch with her publicist and everything. They were like putting us in touch. It was a whole thing, and then it just sort of the trail went cold. It was so upsetting.
Yeah, they basically literally stopped. Almost as if they listened to an episode.
Right.
They just went, right, let's just stop recording.
You know what? You say that as a joke. It did genuinely feel that. It was like I got in touch. They were like, "Oh yeah, that sounds fun. She's doing a." This was during lockdown, and I think they were releasing. It was one of the books, and so she was doing a bunch of podcasts. And I thought, I'm going to capitalize on her current. You know, she did a bunch of podcasts while in lockdown over the internet. We're in the UK anyway. It was always going to be over the internet for us. It was never going to be in person, obviously, because there's this thing called the ocean between us. So that's fine. Like, what a great opportunity. So like, I reached out and they got back in touch and were like, yeah, no problem. We'll pass it on. We'll sort it out. It was like this back and forth for a little while sorting it out, and then it was just suddenly one day, just no one replies. So I send one more polite check in, which I think is as many as you're allowed to do. You know, after a week, I sort of went, oh, well, any update on this? And then just no reply. So, yeah, it did feel a bit like that's what happened, which is a shame. Maybe they heard maybe they heard our review of Change Your Mind and her, because a lot of people were upset that we weren't very, we didn't go easy on that episode. Or maybe they heard my review of the movie where I described it as
I was
going to
say, yeah, Change Your Mind. We were very. Oh no, Change Your Mind did feel a bit rushed, didn't it? Yeah,
it was hugely rushed. We definitely pulled Change Your Mind a bit apart, but obviously, in retrospect, Change Your Mind's criticisms, while fair in a vacuum of the episode, when you know the outer context, make a lot of sense. You know, she was basically given that X number of episodes to wrap up her show because she'd done the wedding, and in that context, obviously, I will take a rushed ending while we get the wedding, then Cartoon Network getting their way, not doing the wedding, and then getting the rest of the show. So
it was the movie that I think in particular, like you just said yourself. I think I was a bit more defensive of it, but yeah,
I literally called it McDonald's. I was like, it's tasty while you eat it, but it's basically nothing. which is
anyway.
Hard.
So that's why we've.
But
yeah. So yeah, no. I really like that cliffhanger moment because it made me think about those things.
Yes. So we're there, Chris. Say the thing.
Let's trivia it up.
There we go. I'm gonna give you some trivia. So when Katara is seen as a child in flashbacks, her winter coat with the crescent moon closely resembles the winter coat that she wore in the Northern Water Tribe while mastering waterbending with Master Paku, suggesting that, you know, the two water tribes, despite being literally on the opposite side of the planet to each other, somehow share fashion. Cool.
Nice, that is cool.
This is the only episode where Kaya's name is mentioned, and Hakoda is the only person to actually say her name out loud. In this episode, waterbending is seen performed as influenced by two primary opportune factors. That is the presence of a full moon and the presence of rain. In addition, waterbending is also seen under the influence of strong emotion, yet another strong factor that determines the potency of the art's use. So, much like how firebending is stronger under the sun, waterbending affected by weather conditions in terms of the moon, but also rain. But I feel like with the rain thing, I don't know if that increased her power or just gave her more water to work with. But either way, cool visual. Turbulent water and moody lighting in this episode represent Katara's emotional state. That is not trivia. Why is that still in there? Who wrote that? Fuck off.
Don't sit on the fence, Dan. Tell us how you feel about it.
That's not trivia. It's not trivia. That's just like an observation about the content of the episode. I don't know. It's not really trivia. According to the commentary of this episode, the sound used when Sokka sucked the flower into his mouth was a power drill.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, there you go. And that's the trivia. That's it. There wasn't much.
Fair.
Cool.
Have we got a list of questions? I can't remember.
We don't. We've not got any more, and because we're only a couple episodes from the end, I'm gonna just let the ending episodes be the ending episodes, without reaching out for more questions. But when we come back for rewind reviews, we'll bring those back. So shortly, if you're on the Patreon, you'll be able to ask a question that we'll answer in our next series of rewind reviews. So for anyone interested, patreon.com/nothing-but-static. If you want to support us for as little as $1 a month, you get episodes of this podcast and our other podcast, our other less successful podcast, rewind reviews, a week early. So you can sort of, so you can get on that now. If you're not already on the Patreon, you can hear next week's episode of this right now by going over there and giving as little as $1 a month. You can give more. I always borrow the phrase from the Weekly Planet podcast when I say whatever amount of money would fall out of your pocket and you wouldn't notice is the best amount to be giving. And if there is no amount that would fall out of your pocket and you wouldn't notice, then you shouldn't be giving. Please do not do that. Keep your money. We're okay. We're fine. We're getting by. We're breaking even, so don't worry about it. Support us in other ways, like you can like and subscribe and all that stuff on the various platforms. You can leave reviews on iTunes. That always helps. I know Spotify has some sort of review system now. I've not looked at it, but I'm sure there's some way you can sort of poke or like or heart or thumbs up or star the episodes or whatever. And that tells Spotify you enjoyed it, and that makes them show it to other people. So feel free to review and support us in all those ways. The other way you can do it, of course, is by telling a friend. We always like that. You tell a friend that you could listen to the podcast, you double our listenership. So,
not relevant to anything, but Spotify randomly logged me out 2 days ago. That was irritating.
Well, that's annoying on the grounds that I wouldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you what my Spotify password is. If that happened to me,
exactly.
I'd be fucked.
That's why I've not logged back in yet. I've got to try and work it out.
This is eerily similar to what happened with you in the Discord, where you got logged out, couldn't remember your password, and didn't get logged back in for like 8 months, maybe even more.
No, and even then, now when I comment on things, you can tell people are a bit like, "Oh shit,
yeah, Chris is here." Yeah, I always forget that you can get access again, and then when you show up, I'm always like, "Oh yeah, Chris sometimes comes in here."
I don't even use Spotify for music. I use it for podcasts. So I'm like, I do need to log back in, or I'm suddenly going to be behind on stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, what podcast app you use. I use Overcast. Chris uses Spotify. You probably have one. There's a bunch. There's so many podcast apps. They all have reviewing systems. So let that podcast app know you enjoyed our podcast. They might suggest it to other people. Another way, of course, you can help us is by recommending it to a friend. And then the final way you can help us is just by keep listening. We like that too. That's great.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
if you found this whole thing very irritating and didn't enjoy it at all, then I would recommend not listening.
No, but if you didn't mind the sort of sidetracks and stuff like that, then genuinely, there's only 5 episodes of Analysing Avatar left. But you may get a kick out of rewind reviews. We often do quite obscure movies, but even they can be fun. We do movies that you will have heard of. So keep listening. Check out. Don't be afraid to check out rewind reviews. You might enjoy yourself.
Yeah, you very well might. It's funny. I've had some old friends get in touch and say, "Oh, I don't listen to your TV podcast because obviously, always worried about spoilers or whatever." But I've dipped into rewind reviews because it's either a movie I've never heard of and therefore don't care about spoilers, or if it's one I care about, I've already seen it. Because we generally do older movies on rewind reviews, so people have been diving into that, and I've been getting a lot of nice feedback for the people who are listening. It just doesn't seem to be getting any traction in terms of audience, whatever. But that's fine. We rewind reviews is genuinely the passion project in that we have so much fun doing it. It does not matter that basically no one listens. It's so much fun. It's always a joy to just watch some movie I remember loving as a child and being like, "Oh, it's shit," or "Wow, this holds up." It's just incredible to do.
when I say I do a podcast and people say how many listeners do you get, and I say I don't know, they assume that I'm lying because I'm too ashamed to admit it, and I'm like, no, I'll tell you how low it was if I knew. I genuinely don't log in and deal with that side of things.
Yeah, and it's tricky as well because like the numbers always steadily go up on all these podcasts. Nothing but static, steadily grown over the years. Analysing Avatar has grown over its time. Steven University did the same. So I never like to give out numbers on the podcast if I can avoid it, because there might be a day when sponsorship is an option and I might be asked how many numbers we have, and I'll screenshot our analytics and send it over. But if there's audio documentation of me giving a different number...
Yeah, well, and also, like, it's to truly work that out would take time, because then, the YouTube figures need to be accounted for and all of that sort of stuff. So,
right, yeah, which is always a pain. And the YouTube figures are always way lower than the audio ones, because obviously there's nothing... The YouTube videos are just a static visual or a shifting visual with the audio over. Most people find us on YouTube and then end up listening to it on, whatever their podcast app of choice is. Very few people stick with us on YouTube. So the YouTube numbers are always like the number of people sort of discovering us, generally speaking, or people going to the YouTube specifically to comment to help with the analytics, which, by the way, we do also... I don't get as much time to reply as I used to, so I am sorry to all of you who do that. But I know people literally every Tuesday go and put comments on the video just to help push it up the analytics, and that's lovely. Anyone who's doing that,
thank you so much,
the heroes. I know some of you are definitely doing that, so you all deserve you will. Well, if you ever see me out in the world, nudge me and I'll buy you a beer.
There you go.
You deserve it. We really appreciate it. So, that's all the ways you can support us. And Analysing Avatar, Rewind Reviews is going to be a fun one this year. I tell you now, we're coming back with Roger Rabbit, and that is going to be an interesting one, because Chris doesn't... He thinks he might have partially seen some of it at uni, but doesn't really remember it, and it might be one of my favourite movies of all time. So, I'm really hoping Chris loves that movie, because if he doesn't, I don't know if my little nerd heart can take it. So that first episode is going to be really fun for one way or another. It's either going to be two people gushing about how great Roger Rabbit is, or it's going to be me literally having my heart smashed into 1,000 pieces.
So check that out. But before then, Dan, we got 5 more episodes of Avatar.
We have. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Oh, if you're wondering how we're going to do the finale, by the way, we'll save that conversation for next week. That's next week's conversation, because we'll tell people what the plan is for that. But yeah,
we have got a plan.
Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you in a week's time for more of this, unless you want to jump over to the old patreon.com/nothingbutstatic. But otherwise, Rapho supplies us that great piece of artwork of Appa and the gang in front of the sunset. Go support Rapho. Rapho.com, Instagram.com/Raphodraws, or launchlinks.io/u/Raphodraws, which is give you links to like Rapho's Redbubble account and a bunch of places where you can see Rapho's art and comics that Rapho's worked on, and just a bunch of other stuff, and it's all really good. Every time we talk about it, I have the link up, and I click on it and look, and there's always something new that I think looks awesome. So, go support Rapho. Raphodraws. I should say, someone said that we always say Raphodraws, but we never actually spell it out. Rapho for Rapho. So there you go. So that's everything for this week. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll see you next week when we sit down to watch the Ember Island Players. And I'll give you a little tease, Chris, for the tag at the end of the episode. This episode is one of Nadia's absolute favourites, and she has demanded we watch this together. I will have to watch this with her, and she got really sad last night because we hadn't seen much of each other the last week because of work schedules. She thought I'd done it already and thought she'd missed it.
Well, tell Nadia that excites me, because it's either an amazing episode or it's batshit crazy.
Yep.
And I look forward to finding out which.
Yep, to both of those.
Cool.
Bye.